hard to see for it. Let's see.
Who's online?
YouTube is Facebook. Of course. You guys know. Had problems yesterday with the chat. Chat's just it's you know, it's weird. It's weird. It's weird with Restream. Still, I don't get. Hey, Kevin. Good morning. See, yep. Let's get this over with. Alex, come on. It's Friday Eve, man. The day is just starting. The day is young. I'm trying to keep track. I've got in this window over there. There's 3 different chat boxes. I've got the YouTube one, I've got the Restream one, and I've got the Ecamm one. So I can see it come in, because yesterday, again, I had the Restream up, but I didn't have the YouTube one up. And there was chat that still was not coming through. Cleared the cache this morning, did a bunch of stuff that they said at Restream maybe is going to fix it. But, morning, Paul. Oh, the regular crew's here. If we have Mike Bravo, then we'll have, I think, the normal. D-Nice needs to be here too. What a week, really, huh? It's been a lot going on this week. Seems like it's taken forever, but it also seems like it's been over like that. Tomorrow is Friday. Hopefully, you have good plans for the weekend. I know one day we're going to go out and try to enjoy outside, which is strange for this ongoing pandemic world we're in. Whether you believe it or not, it's the world we live in. So, man, got a lot going on. There is a bootloader flaw out that impacts Windows and Microsoft. Talk about that today. The Big 5 vulnerability, the Big IP, the F5, Big 5. The F5 vulnerability that impacts Big IP is still out there and rolling, and there's a little more information about it being exploited now, which is crazy. Now it's under exploit. Diebold, and in the United States we know about Diebold because they're the folks that make a lot of the voting machines, the machines that we use for voting. Diebold's big in that, but they also make a lot of ATM machines, and they're being hacked in Europe like crazy. If you remember way back when, and this is way back before big computer hacking, there was beige boxers and blue boxers, and the folks that were exploiting the phone systems. That was the big hacker back in the day. The folks that would exploit the phone system, the switches and the dials and the coin accepting kind of thing. All that stuff was being exploited back then. That was the big hackers back then. And they used these beige boxes and blue boxes and different types of physical devices to impact that phone network. Well, we're seeing kind of the same thing. This black box device that's being used against these ATMs in Europe. I'm sure it could be used just as easily here in the United States. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Hackers, I guess, are like everyone else. Apparently there's a shortage of hackers, and now there's a hacker mentorship program on the dark web. And we're talking about the bad hackers, not the evil. We're not talking about the MIT hackers. Hackers that are trying to use, trying to build a better world by understanding how things work. That type of hacker, not the good hacker. I'm talking about the dark side hacker. Still using Windows as the OS for Diebold. Talking about Diebold, Kevin. They're talking about a proprietary software, and the proprietary software apparently seems to be their downfall. that's we talk about the article. It's not a huge article. It'll be a quick one this morning. Also, I got a piece of kit, as the Brits would say. Used to love hanging out with the Brits when I was in the Army. British Army is a different beast than any other army I've ever seen. The British Army, if you've ever been in the Army, in the U.S. Army, you're expected to make rank at a certain rate. If you're if you're a PFC or a corporal or an E4 or an E5 for too long, it's kind of frowned upon if you're that for a long time. But in the British Army, you could be a corporal for 20 years and nobody cares. They just want you to be a professional soldier. But they drank like nobody's business. But so they could. That's a long story around a piece of kit. I've got a piece of kit that was not bought by me. It's bought by my company, really, through a stipend program we have. And I'll explain why I got it when we get to it. So that'll be at the end of the show. So it's a piece of kit for the way I'm working now. Kevin's saying nope. Used to work on them. So I would love to get your input later when we get to that article, because I didn't work on them. I'm kind of going on what I know from the article, and the article is very pointed about a different story they're telling. So it's not a long article, so it's one of the last ones we have. But lots to go over, and we'll also talk about, of course, the day it is today. What day is it in our weird holiday? So, as always, let me do the, I need to move that camera, because when I tap on the table, everything moves. So I got to move that camera right there. As always, I gotta say this, because it's what grows the channel. So if you haven't done it yet, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't hit the bell over there to be notified when new content comes out, please hit the bell. More than that, if you like this video, click that like button. If you do like it, share with your friends. If there's folks you know that are in this world that need some pumping up, that need to be cyber ready every day. Man, I gotta move that camera. Share with them. We're all about sharing information. Like this Diebold thing, I know what I read, but Kevin is going to hopefully give us some insight, what he knows or what he can tell, because I'm sure organizations like that probably have some NDAs and that kind of stuff. So obviously, he can't tell us everything, but he can tell us hopefully some stuff. So let me throw the intro up and try to get everything moved around as quick as I can, so we can get back to the, as Ed Sullivan would say, the really big shoe. All right, the really, really big shoe, right? First story up in this mug. Industrial VPN flaws could let attackers target critical infrastructures. This is from Hacker News. I actually got this not only in my search this morning, but I actually got it as a pop-up from Hacker News. This morning they're talking a lot about this industrial VPN flaws, and they talk about flaws because they're talking about more than one. And in the article they talk about 3 specific flaws that all lead to the same thing. So article starts out, cybersecurity researchers have discovered vulnerabilities in industrial VPN implementations, primarily used to provide remote access to operational technology, or OT, as opposed to IT. And it's a term that you got to get used to if you're not used to it yet, OT and IT, because it's just growing. That could allow hackers to overwrite data, execute malicious code, and compromise industrial control systems, or ICSs. So talk about the ways that VPNs are being used, and VPNs are being used to access these industrial control systems, or ICS, or SCADA devices, or PLCs, or programmable logic controllers. Really, it's the things that automate our world, right? So in the bad old days, in the Industrial Revolution, we built these pumps, and they would pump water, and when we wanted to turn on a valve, some guy would climb the ladder and turn the big wheel and turn the valve on, and then they would get done and they would turn the big wheel and turn the valve off. And we decided later this we can computerize this. We can put a motor on there. We can have that controlled by a logic controller. We can have a industrial control system that, hey, when we need the valve on, we push a button, like Homer Simpson would push a button. The motor comes on, it opens the valve, push the button, the motor turns on, it closes the valve. And things were great. These SCADA devices, ICSs, were isolated on their own networks. And a lot of times they didn't even run on IP or internet protocol. They ran on their own different specific protocols. But the good idea fairy came. And the good idea fairy always comes. And normally it was caused by first leadership saying, hey, I know the industrial control systems, the SCADA devices we have, are making widgets. And, I always have to go to somebody and have them either go to the site or somehow give me a report to say how many widgets we're making. And I don't want that. I want to be able to go from my computer that's on an IP network in the IT world, and I want to be able to log on to that system over there in the OT, or the SCADA devices, and I want to be able to create a report and be able to see the real-time report of how many widgets are being made. So we started bridging and connecting the OT and IT networks together, or the SCADA devices and the non-SCADA devices. That created a giant flaw because, like everything else in these isolated worlds, when they were created as an isolated world, we didn't think anybody would ever connect to them. We always thought it was going to be like a local connection. Well, now in the world we live in, there's a VPN connection that VPNs into these environments where we can look at the production flow and what's going on with the SCADA device and that kind of stuff. And this article is talking about 3 big flaws in 3 of the major products used to access VPN technology in these OT environments. So, according to researchers, successful exploitation of these vulnerabilities can give an unauthenticated attacker direct access to the ICS devices and potentially cause some physical damage. And if you want to see physical damage on SCADA devices, there's a Sandina Labs from Idaho. Years and years ago, they learned that they could log into a generator in a SCADA world and just ramp that thing up to full power and just physically destroy it. There's some good news this morning. Happy to inform you that PastMySec Plus on Tuesday with an 817 score. That's a pretty dang good score. I see a lot of folks squeaking by with those mid 700 scores. 817 is rocking it. Frokabana, nice job. Congratulations. Now the question is, what is next? What's next on your list? I would say, I don't know if Mike Bravo's out there in the world today. If you want to, a $50 voucher can get you set for the beta for Cloud Plus. Study for it. $50 isn't bad. That's a lot better than normal. Now, obviously, I didn't get paid by CompTIA, nothing like that. Just Mike Bravo put it out on the Facebook page the other day, and it's $50 to try something. Usually, the version 2 of the exam is $330. Version 3 of it is $50 right now, so not a bad deal. If you don't pass, you're out like a dinner or a lunch. But congratulations. Good to see you this morning. So, how we're going to drive on with this thing, this exploitation. First is SECOman's Gate Manager. So, researchers uncovered multiple security flaws, including critical vulnerability in the article CVE 2020-14500, allows overriding arbitrary data, executing arbitrary code, or causing a denial of service condition. Also running commands as roots and obtaining commands as root and obtaining user passwords due to the use of a weak hash type process in their hashing algorithm. Gate Manager is widely used ICS remote access server deployed in worldwide as a SaaS solution or software as a service solution. And you can connect the internet network and then get to your network connection to your SCADA devices. So one of the things in here here's the thing we're going to see. The flaw can be exploited remotely without requiring any authentication to achieve remote code execution. That's the story of the day. RCE, remote code execution, with all of these things is terrible. Moxa EDRG902 and EDRG903 industrial VPN servers. They have a stack-based buffer overflow, and this is CVE 2020 14511. And guess what? Once you run the buffer overflow, guess what you get? Remote code execution without the need for any credentials. And then they've also targeted and tested the HMS network eCatcher, which is a proprietary VPN client that connects to the company's E1 VPN device. And they found that there's a stack-based buffer overflow, CVE 2020 14498, and guess what? It can be exploited to achieve remote code execution. Each one of these leads to the same thing: RCE, remote code execution. Obviously, a bad situation. And it looks like all of them, you don't need any credentials. So your IoT devices, your operational technology. If you don't think it impacts you, you might want to check your network. You may have OT stuff out there you just don't know about. I worked with a large pharmaceutical. Obviously, I won't say their name, and it was my first really big in-depth dive into OT, because they had machines that did all kinds of stuff. The machines that kept track of making the drugs, especially the biological stuff. They had a lot of OT stuff there, so there was a big push to make sure that OT is as secure as IT, and usually it's not. Sounds like someone is ready for trivia night after the PastMySec Plus. I think so. I think so. Africabana, you need to be at trivia night tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern time, right here, Cyber-Recon YouTube channel. It's awesome fun. I think it's fun. Mako went through. You guys you're probably gonna be mad at him. The eyes shut, whatever we want to call it, where it's just audio. There's a couple there's a couple giveaways. There's a couple of them. They're gonna probably get you. And a couple of them, I'm not sure if if you guess and get it, it's probably the only way you're gonna get it, I think. Potpourri, Eyes Shut, I guess we're gonna call it. Command Line Hijinx, and I don't remember the fourth one. Only 40 questions tonight. It'll be about an hour long. So VPNs on IoT stuff, VPNs on industrial systems, OT. If you don't know about OT, if you're working security, you need to learn, get skilled up on OT. OT is coming fast. Just keeping an eye on the prize over there on the chat session. Zoom. You guys know, if you guys know that Zoom is out there, and it's kind of what we talked about. Because you're a security person, you may not use some of these tools. But I think if you don't expose yourself to them, you're limiting yourself. And the reason I say that is, just because you're not using them doesn't mean somebody else is not using them. So your friends, your family, your coworkers, people at work, they're probably using them, and they may look to you to say, how do we secure these things? How do I use this thing securely? And if you're not schooled on it, if you don't know what's going on with it, you don't know how it works, obviously you're going to be at a loss. So I say get in there, learn them, learn how to secure them. Zoom is no different than any other piece of software. There's flaws in it, there's vulnerabilities in it, but it's a good tool that can be used if it's done right? When it first came out, when the pandemic first hit, it was riddled with problems. People could just jump in on meetings. There was a vast cornucopia of problems. You love to say things like that. Vast cornucopia of problems. This latest one, and you guys can probably get it, when they had this Zoom bombing, and Zoom bombing is when somebody jumps in on a meeting, right? And a lot of celebrities were doing it. There was Zoom bombing weddings, which is not a bad thing. But in schools were using Zoom to conduct classes, and sometimes some kids don't want to go to school. When they don't want to go to school, they were posting the link to the meeting on 4chan, and they were inviting people to Zoom bomb it. These people could get in and just pop in and do whatever. They could do crazy, nasty things that cause the class to stop. They could do funny things, whatever. It was something to stop the class. So Zoom to their benefit, they went in and they said, okay, we're going to fix a lot of our security problems. So they put passwords on the meeting. So now when you created a Zoom meeting, you had the option of creating a password that allowed, that forced people to put a password in to log into the meeting. There's other security features they put in place too, but this is the one we're focusing on. So by default, Zoom meetings were protected by a 6-digit numeric password. And if you're good with the math, you'll realize that's 1 million different combinations. And if you're schooled on processing power right now, you know 1 million different things can be processed by a computer very quickly. Now, in our world where we talk about RMF and controls and really just security controls in general, we have a thing that's called limit number of logons, right? So we say if you log on 4 times, if you log on 3 times or 5 times, that 6th time you try to log on, it's going to lock the system. And then you got to wait 15 minutes, or you got to wait for an algorithm, or you have to wait for an administrator to unlock your account. And you can probably guess where we're going here. Zoom didn't have this. Zoom didn't have that lockout feature set. So what these guys figured out, what the researchers figured out, is they could go get an Amazon cloud server, and they could spin this thing up, and they could launch it at a Zoom meeting, and that's obviously their Zoom meeting. They're doing this the right way. And they just started grinding. They started just hitting it with different passwords. And obviously, you're not going to always have to get to 1 million passwords. You may, through brute force, you may hit that right up front. You may hit it at, 100,000 tries. You may hit it at 999,000 tries. But at some point in this brute force attack, you're going to hit the right number. In their test, Thomas Anthony's test, they used one server in Amazon, and they tried to brute force the password. It took about 25 minutes, and I think they hit like 90,000. What was their number here? Yeah, 91,000 passwords using an AWS machine before it hit the right password. So it's random. It's going to have to figure out the password, and you have just as much chance of hitting it on the first try as the last try. All right, that's the way the odds work. So 25 minutes, check 91,000 passwords using an AWS machine. He goes on to say, with improved threading and distributing across 4 to 5 cloud servers, you could check the entire password space within a few minutes. And obviously, as you expand that, you could get 30 cloud servers or 100 cloud servers and break this thing. Good morning, Druve Illustrator. Am I saying that? Druve Illustrator. Druve Illustrator, right? Can I hack Zoom? You can hack probably your own Zoom. I wouldn't suggest hacking anyone else's Zoom. That's probably not a good idea. Just that's Zoom is out there. So to their credit, this flaw was released to Zoom through their normal channels on April 1st. After his report, Zoom took down the web client starting April 2nd, the next day, to address the vulnerability. Bleeping Computer reported that the time Zoom was going through an outage and users were getting a 403 forbidden error. Obviously not a good thing, a little bit of a self-inflicted denial of service. Zoom did put out a press statement. Upon learning of this issue on April 1st, we immediately took down all of the Zoom web clients to ensure our users' security while we implemented mitigations. Since we have improved our rate limiting and addressed the CSRF, or cross-site request forgery token issues, and relaunched the web client April 9th with fixes in the issue. The issue was fully resolved and no user action was required. We're not aware of any instances of the exploit being used in the wild. We thank Tom Anthony for bringing the issue to our attention. If you think we found security issues with Zoom products, please send a detailed report to, and then they give their address. So really, on Zoom's part, it was good. They're addressing these things quickly, and I think that's because they got beat up so badly in their first flaws. When the first flaws came out, they were beat down pretty bad. Photo bombing pranks, the zero-day code. There was all kinds of stuff going on when Zoom first came out, because it went from low usage to just millions of people using it almost overnight. So what they've done is they've done some rate limiting. They've fixed the cross-site request forgery, which this article doesn't even talk about. And they've also implemented alphanumeric passwords for their meetings. So now you have to, in the past, the reason they use numbers is so you could join from your phone. You just use the numbers on your phone. Now you have to join from a web client, whether that's the Zoom client or a web-based browser. So that's the long and the short of it. Is Zoom, for their credit, Zoom is quick to address these vulnerabilities. Obviously, there's vulnerabilities in just about every piece of software. The big thing is, if it needs an update, you need to give it an update. If you need to put protective measures in place on your side, maybe limiting the number of times people can log in, or increasing the strength of your password. And if you can do that yourself, I would say go ahead and do that yourself. Don't wait for the company to do that, whether that's these guys, Zoom, or anyone else, because we're going to see, as you know, but F5 had that huge issue. So, actually, I haven't talked about F5. We talked about it earlier, last week or the week before. So that's Zoom. BootHole, you'll probably hear about BootHole. This one is gaining some press, so it's getting notoriety in the normal press. So this thing impacts Linux and Windows, right? And if you want to secure your environment, you can implement Secure Boot, which means there's a measured boot process that if your computer is changed, the boot process will not work, right? So if somebody gets in somehow and changes your system, maybe they go in and they change the password or something. Sorry, I was trying to keep track of the chat over there. It's a way to ensure that the system hasn't changed in an unauthorized manner. So all the changes have to be approved by an administrator. So somebody goes in, the change is made. It's a measured boot process. So you go from a measured state, so it's got a record of what's going on in the boot process. And if something's changed, like the hard drive's changed out, or sometimes the case is opened, when the system goes to boot, this measured boot process, the secure boot, knows that the system changed and it won't boot. It holds at that pre-OS stage, in the bootloader stage, and it doesn't load any further. It gives a warning that, hey, the administrator needs to come check this thing out. So what this BootHole does, there's a GRUB process that loads, and if you're using Linux, you're probably really familiar with GRUB. So there's a BootHole vulnerability in GRUB2. And it's not actually in GRUB2, it's in the GRUB config file, or the CFG file. And researchers say that BootHole allows attackers to tamper with the GRUB2 component to insert and execute malicious code during the boot loading process, effectively allowing attackers to plant code that has full control of the operating system launched at a later point. So really, they can take the secure boot process out and replace it with a malicious one that is actually loaded before the operating system. So if we remove the operating system and reload it, we still have this boot level vulnerability existing. So it's pretty bad. Eucalyptum is the folks that found this. And they've got on the article, obviously always listed in the show notes, they've got some code examples, how the buffer overflow works, and how they can replace the bootloader with a malicious bootloader that is loaded before the operating system starts, which obviously makes for a bad day for everyone. So Linux has been pretty quick to fix this thing. So on the CVE for this one is 2020 10.7.13. There's a lot of fixes out for Linux already, right? And a lot of those are linked in the ZDNet article. Canonical, Ubuntu's, Debian, HP, VMware. A lot of those are already out and they're linked there. Microsoft has the link there. It talks about mitigation, but there's no patch for Microsoft yet. And you might say, well, what in the world is going on with Microsoft being on this list? Because we're talking about GRUB, which is normally a Linux loader. So in addition to Linux systems, any systems that use Secure Boot with the standard Microsoft UEFI-CA is vulnerable to this issue. So it's the same issue in Windows as it is in Linux in this case, and that's why it's so bad. Not sure if we had not sure what the CVE score was for this one. Yeah, I don't see it in the article. Should be pretty bad. The thing is, you have to compromise the system. Normally you have to get somehow to get to that bootloader process. So obviously, why are people doing this? Obviously, it's to take control of the system and use the system for whatever nefarious means they want. How we protect ourselves, when these patches come out, apply the patches right away. Microsoft's got some notes on how, change your bootloader process. Maybe don't use Secure Boot, because then you're not going to be worrying about this because it's not going to be impacting you. So a lot of things going on with this BootHole, probably more to follow. I think Microsoft will probably get something out hopefully today or tomorrow. Drew Illustrator, hopefully I'm saying that right. Can I join Random Classic in Zoom? Can you talk about can you join Zoomy? I would, obviously I'm going to tell you that the thing we do from the ethical side of the house is, if it's something you're testing and you have access, you're authorized to do it. That's a big thing. You have authorization to do it, to try it. Obviously, that's what you're there to do. You're there to try it, to test the exploitability of Zoom. If you don't have authorization and you're going out there and you're trying it on someone's system that you don't own, probably bad news. I would say not advise you to do that at all. Good way to get into trouble, for sure. So that's the BootHole. F5. We talked about this F5 flaw. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this article because we already talked about the flaw quite a bit. Mirai. Anyways, there's a Mirai botnet downloader. Wow, is being dropped now with this thing. So the big IP product from F5 is the biggest thing vulnerable to this thing. But with this, you can exploit that and get access to Internet of Things, and you can exploit the vulnerability. The way they're doing it is in an HTTP GET request. If they throw a semicolon in there in the URI, the Linux command treats that as an escape, and then the vulnerability can be triggered after that. So this is from our good folks at Trend Micro, are talking about how this can be exploited. So while the rule used for testing seems simple, it allows a broad range of malware, Python, or Ruby proofs of concept to check against. From the disclosure date, July 1, we found the first sample on an ELF file compiled in a MIPS architecture, millions of instructions per second. July 11 identified two addresses, and the addresses are listed in the article, that are identified as command and control servers. A common pattern with IoT malware like this one is finding different files hosted on one domain with different extensions meant to attack different architectures. Upon checking, they found a bunch of files, and they're listed in the article. They also found that the Sora file names have been used, which is a Mirai variant that can be used for brute force attacks. And the Sora that actively searches IoT devices for vulnerability, infects them, and turns them into bots. So essentially, what they're trying to the big point of this thing is the vulnerability that was discovered in F5 is now being used to turn devices into bots that can be used for whatever. If they can use them for crypto mining, they will. If they can use them for denial of service attacks, they will. They being the attackers. Why would they want to do this? That's the why. They want to get your machines and turn them into bots, even if they're IoT devices. There's a big conclusion and recommendation. Trend is going to say make sure you're running Trend and update the antivirus, right? But there's some good best practices. Ensure that IoT devices firmware run on the latest versions by consistently monitoring the manufacturer releases. Obviously, keep your stuff updated. Use virtual private network to prevent exposing any management interfaces directly to the internet. We know that could be an issue based on our first article, but that's okay. Use a VPN. Employ network segmentation to limit the spread of infections and customize the security settings of each device. Two things there: customize your settings and network segmentation to keep the attacker from moving laterally. Ensure there's network traffic monitoring and detection system with a good web application firewall or WAF in place. This is to track baseline and abnormal ranges of usage, and then install a multi-layered protection system that can detect, block, prevent threats such as brute force attacks that abuse the security flaws for these entries. So, and obviously they're going to point to use Trend because it's the best ever, according to obviously the article from Trend. Okay, yeah, here we go. We got the first problem with this stuff is obviously we're not getting all our feeds are not coming through. That's okay. Alex, how probable is this to happen? If you're using F5, this is very probable attack. They ran a probe, and I think there was like 7,000 devices they found, and I was trying to find my 7,000 exposed hosts online, considering the ones listening on ports 443 and 8443. As exposed, we mean accessible from the internet, not necessarily they have vulnerabilities. Trying to find there we go. This is the point. Recognizing the severity of the security flaw, the Department of Defense's Cyber Command issued a tweet 3 days after the disclosure, advising immediate remediation of the vulnerability, given the vulnerability's disclosure date and number of days it took to exploit. The exploit to be at large. It only took 10 days from that point to the point that there was a real attack in the wild. It appears the malicious actors are paying close attention to the most recent disclosures. So DoD's pushed something out real quick, and anytime DoD does that, you kind of have to pay attention to it. So Alex, to your question, how probable is this to happen? If you have F5, if you're using Big IP now and you haven't done anything to shore this thing up to protect it, I think, given that there's 7,000, I think that you showed in to scan for these things, 7,000 exposed hosts online, that's a very focused problem set, or that set of targets. 7,000 hosts, if these guys found them, the bad guys are going to find them. If you're one of those 7,000 exposed hosts, there's a very high probability that you're going to be, at least the breach is going to be attempted on your F5 devices. About the bootloader, I'm getting a serious, there's definitely a serious lag. Alex was asking about the bootloader, and I'm not, can't put them on the screen because they're not coming through again. Thanks. So the flaws in the bootloader are the biggest thing is if someone can get access to your physical device, that's the first thing. That's the first way they're going to exploit this thing. If they can get access to that GRUB config file remotely, if there's a way they can get to it remotely, like, for example, in a virtual machine, if they can get access to that GRUB CFG file, the config file, it can be um, exploited. How likely do I think you are they get exploited? First of all, if you're not running the measured boot, the trusted boot, secure bootloader, it's not going to be a problem with you. First of all, it's not. You're not using that part of the operating system or the bootloader. So that's the first thing. Are you using secure boot? So in the article, furthermore, the secure boot process was specifically created to prevent high privileged accounts from compromising the boot process. Meaning the boot hole is a major security hole in the IT ecosystem. Yeah, I wish I had a CVS score or CVE score on this thing. So I'd like to see what the good folks at MITRE and stuff think. I personally think it's a big enough risk to figure out at least where you're using secure boot and if there's a patch available. For these folks to, especially like Linux, to turn the patch in like a day, really quickly. Microsoft's a little bit slower. Yeah, I don't have a CVE score. I think it's fairly probable that if the machines are either A, exposed to physical access, or B, exposed to access from the internet or from some network, attack is probable. It looks to me like it has to be chained with something else. So you're going to have some way to get to the box to start with. So you have to how to get to the box to be able to modify the GRUB config file, CFG file. So I think that brings it down a little bit. They use that risk rating. Eucalypsum says there's 80 shims, which is that modification that hardware manufacturers put in when they build an operating system specifically for a piece of hardware. So I think, how probable is this to happen? I would probably put it at a moderate probability. It's a high impact for sure. If you are, first, one, using secure boot, and two, people can get to that config file. Those are the two prerequisites. I think that's what drives it down quite a bit. If they can do that, you are using secure boot, and they can get to that config file, it's probably a bad day for you. But I think the probability of both those things happening is probably moderate at best. Obviously, secure your boxes. Make sure that physically people can't get to the computer. If it's a virtual environment, like most people are working today, if there's a virtual environment, make sure people can't get to those types of files across the network, and especially across the internet, right? So if we can control the way the system boots, if we can control the way people can access the system, obviously you're going to drive that down. So I think at best, moderate. It's a great question, Alex. You always have the bestest questions. Diebold, International Innovation Delivered. And this is where Kevin, definitely jump in. I'll keep an eye out on this third chat because it's hitting here. It's not getting to Restream. That means it's not getting to Ecamm, which is, I think, guys, if you're watching, if there's anyone, let me see. Is there anyone out there? Yeah, there is someone on Twitch. We might be dropping the live Twitch feed because it's Restream. Most people are watching through YouTube. That might be, we might just go straight to YouTube because the Restream is just causing problems with the chat. It's maybe not worth it. Because I can see the questions here, they're just not getting through Restream. I've done all the things that Restream folks have told me to do, and it's just not working. Let me know what you think, Kevin, on this. But here's the scoop, and this is from Cyware Social. Threat actors have resorted to using software from Diebold's Nixdorf ATM in a series of hacks against cash terminals across Europe. The attacks come with the use of a black box device and Diebold's ProCache 2050 XE USB terminals that are targeted. It's believed that the company that the device used contains parts of the software stack attacks on the ATM. So you're using parts of the software that's used by the ATM. So maybe it's something on top of Windows. I see what you're saying, Kevin. Maybe it's this custom software that sits on top of Windows. Maybe it is Windows. I'm sure you're right. I shouldn't say maybe. I'm sure you're right. So it's probably the software pack that sits on top of Windows that they're attacking. So you're using pieces of code from that software to build these black box devices, and then just cash out. So they're calling this thing jackpotting, and its aim is to illegally dispense cash from ATMs. The attacker connects the device to the dispenser and targets communication to the cash handling device. In recent attacks, actors are destroying the ATM fascia to gain access to the head compartment. After this, the attackers disconnect the USB cable between the CMD V4 dispense and the special electronics, or the cable between the special electronics and the ATM PC. Instead, this cable is used to connect to the black box used by the attackers to send their malicious cash dispensing commands to the ATM. Obviously, Diebold has some suggestions. Terminal operators are advised to implement the latest machine protections. Customers are recommended to enforce hard disk encryption mechanism to protect the terminal from software modifications. So it sounds like, you get the plastic shell that sits in front of the ATM. Sounds like they have to destroy that in some way. There's a spot they have to break, pull a cable, and then attach this black box, and then run this black box command. And then I think it's just like just like you see in the movies, it starts spitting out money. I don't think it spits it out across the room like we see on some of the comedies. Kevin, I'd love to give if there's anything you can say about this, it'd be awesome to hear it. I know Diebold. There seem to be a lot of these machines. I think they're the smaller machines, but I don't know. I'm not sure how big this ProCache 2050 XE. It's weird that the connections would be just behind the plastic fascia. Maybe that's the way they have to be. I don't know. I'm just giving a couple minutes for Kevin to be able to provide insight if he can. And gives me time to check out some coffee. So yeah, of course, why are they doing this? This one's pretty easy. The why on this is to get cash, right? Some of the protections, if your ATM's out in a public space, if it's being monitored, obviously, hopefully you'd see somebody that's destroying the fascia so they can pull the cables and reconnect. It seems like I don't know how they're breaking the plastic, they're cutting the plastic. I don't know what they're doing. I think the fascia is all plastic. Maybe there's metal in there too. And they're pulling the cable, plugging their what used to be like blue boxing, black boxing. They're plugging their device in, and then they're telling it, shoot me some cash, give me some cash out of this thing. There's a good deal, Kevin, and I can't bring it over because of the way the system's working this morning. But Kevin says we used to have an encryption process which disables the dispenser once it's disconnected from the CPU. So once they pull the cable, essentially, it would kill the ability to dispense. And I think that's what suggestions by Diebold is. Customers are recommended to enforce hard disk encryption mechanisms to protect the terminal from software modifications. I think that's exactly what you're saying. But there's a key that is issued by WinCore that the techs used to call a crypto. They used to call it crypto stick. Conclusion from the article. Bottom line, it's not yet clear how the threat actors gain access to the internal software of the machine to create the black box in the first place. However, no cardholder information has been compromised per Diebold. Interesting attack. Years ago, 10, 15 years ago, there was a book, and I don't know if it was Diebold, but there was a manual, a Diebold user manual that was put out that was for the technicians to go in. Apparently, you put it into a service mode, and then you put a pin in that allows you to access the configuration of the machine, of the cache of the ATM. And essentially what the bad guy was doing back then is they were reconfiguring the system to say, you know, maybe we have one bin in there that's a stack of 20s, and one bin in there that's a stack of 10s, and one bin in there that's a stack of 5s, or whatever, however you want to do it, however your ATM is set up. Normally it's, 20s. A lot of ATMs are just 20s. So the attacker was using this attack method. They would log into this administrative interface, and then they would tell the machine that each of those bins is full of $1 bills. And then by using a preloaded card, like you go to get a preloaded Chase card, MasterCard or something like that can be used in ATM, they would put the card in, they would take out, say, $100. The machine would think those bins, each bin was filled with ones, so when it dispensed $100, it actually dispensed $120 bills. So that was the attack back then. This attack right now seems to even bypass that. It seems to just spit the money out. You don't need to do that other step. So looks like it's right. It's in Europe now. I don't know why it's only there. Maybe we just haven't figured it out here. So something to watch. Just part of your bigger picture of IT across everywhere. And again, hello, my name is your mentor, and this really goes back to the Crypt BB, Crypt Bulletin Board, is an exclusive hacking forum that used to reject anyone that wasn't, and I'll do the air quotes, elite, right? So if you couldn't prove you were a good hacker, couldn't prove you were worthy of being a elite hacker, you couldn't get into the forum. So here's the scoop on this one, Cyber Social. The scoop is the Cyber Criminal Forum for several years was exclusive to only the most skilled applicants. However, the site finally introduced a platform for the failed applicants, where the latter could apparently learn and seek guidance from expert hackers. Moreover, last month, the owners of CryptBB reached out to the dark web to recruit new hackers. Why the rule changed? It assumed that by researchers that the point in forming a new platform is to preserve and improve the methods and strategies used by the group with advancements in knowledge and technologies and other motives beyond this move that may involve contributing back to the criminal community and exposing the forum for a much larger audience. So I think maybe the malicious community really is kind of on the same boat that all of security is in. There's not enough people. So they're trying to recruit people to their bulletin board. They're trying to make sure that the skills that have been developed, the information that's been developed, all the stuff that's been developed is being passed on to the next group, and that they can continue to grow. So CryptBB, they talk about CryptBB. It's an English language dark web criminal platform. It's active on Tor since 2017. It used to accept only competent hackers, programs, and carders, folks that skim or make credit cards. The admin team from the forum has advertised some dedicated services provided that are only provided to the forum and its members. These include hackers for hire service, RDP sales, and bug reporting and penetration testing services. Bottom line is the hacking forums like CryptBB are growing with the evolution of cyberspace. With more engagement and recruitment, it becomes a regular name in the field of cybercrime. So trying to get bigger, trying to expose themselves to more people and grow their base to grow into a bigger organization. Kevin's going to give me a call later and get me schooled up on Diebold, which I appreciate, and obviously I'll share what I can with you guys. What is all the good stuff I can share. Today, National Cheesecake Day. Enjoy. Cheesecake is good. I'm trying to stay away from it. I'm trying to be good. Trying to do. Mike Bravo. I don't think he's on this morning. Mike is put on Facebook. He's an old paratrooper, so he's in the gym. I don't know if he ever left the gym. He's out there. He's working out. He's got me motivated. I started working out yesterday. Man, it's been a long time, and I'm a bit sore. But day one, trying to do the right thing, trying to get back in shape, because we all, if we're doing this job, normally we sit behind a desk all day long. And it's easy to get complacent and just fall in that trap of putting weight on. I put a ton of weight on just sitting behind a desk. So what I've done, put the weight bench, I work right over there, weight bench is right over there. When I get that break, a meeting ends early, go knock out my 20-30 minute routine and get on with the day. So I don't have a dedicated time every morning I can do it. Just got to fit it in the day, and that's what we all got to do. We all got to keep moving. So, but the point is, you do all that stuff so you can eat cheesecake. And there's a good link on here from Newsweek about Cheesecake Day. It's National Cheesecake. Celebrate the honor of dessert loved by Americans. Cheesecake in 2020, refrigerated cheesecake sales hit 319.33 million. Cheesecake Factory, all that stuff. There's coupons. There's some good stuff out there. So check that out. And that takes us to the end of our regular programming. But I did tell you I wanted to look into something. So this is something I got for my work. This is a mini PC. And what this thing is, it's a AK3 mini desktop computer with an Intel Celeron J4125 with Windows Pro, 8 gigs of DDR, 420 gigabyte eMCC, micro PC support, dual Wi-Fi, 4K HD output. I think 2 of those. HDMI, VGA. It's a monster. It's a monster in this box. For what it is, I think I paid like $220, something like that, $220 ish for this thing. This is the 8 gigs of RAM, 120 gigabyte, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz dual band Wi-Fi. And it sports a 2.5 inch hard disk drive up to 2 terabytes. I'm not going to need that much. But what the issue is right now, as with most of you guys, we're working remote. And right now I'm logging in remote with a MacBook Pro. And then once I log in, I've got a terminal service, and I'm just they're screen scraping a Windows box back to me, and I do my work on a Windows box, which is great, but I'm using a MacBook Pro to essentially just be a terminal server, which I thought was ridiculous. So I went out there and checked this thing out. So let's go to the overhead. The overhead I've cleaned up just a bit. I don't have the good fit lens yet, but we need a name. Not only do we need a name for the coffee cup, the dancing coffee cup, this cat. I guess I can't put him on the screen. Maybe he's not there. He might be dancing on the other screen. He's probably dancing on the other screen. But the coffee cup, need a name for this big old gorilla head here. But that being said, the mini PC. So let's take a quick look at this thing. If seal is broken, refuse if the seal is broken. We got a good seal there. So what do we got inside here? And this is going to be my machine to connect to my terminal service and just screen scrape back on this thing. That'll free up that MacBook to be an actual MacBook instead of a dumb client, right? So it's Intel-based processor. It's real small, and I think it's got 2 outputs, so I think I can just mount this thing right behind one of my monitors. So there it is. It's a good-looking box. It's plastic, but it looks metal. So we got USB 3, 3. It looks like 3 at least that are USB 3. I'm not sure the other one's not blue, but it could be. Got our mini disc, our what are we calling it? You know what I'm saying? The micro disc. Over here we've got some more. It's hard to see; they're just kind of etched in here. We got headphones. We've got our lock. We've got 2 HDMI outs. Looks like our power, some kind of switch there. I figure out what that switch is all about. USB 4, another USB output. This one's not blue either, but it doesn't mean it's not USB 3. That's where we started. VGA, if you want VGA out. And it looks just like a light on that side. Some cooling underneath. Little logo demonstration above. So I'm thinking about just like sticking this right to the back of a monitor and having it output to my two monitors. So it comes with the box, nice little box. And then what do we have here is probably power supply and some cords maybe. Yeah, just a straight power supply. So our power supply, we'll get this thing up and running. Let you know how it works. I threw a link. If you guys are in the same situation, you want to get one of these things, I threw my affiliate link in the show notes. If you want to get it from there, that'd be great. That way I get a little kickback. Doesn't cost you any more, but it gives me that little bit of kickback back to me. I think this thing's going to be great. We'll get it set up. We'll set up our VPN software. We'll get that all up and running. It's got Windows 10 Pro on it. I think if you buy Windows 10 Pro by itself, let's see, that's probably $100 or more. Windows 10, $149. Looks like about $149 from Newegg. So yeah, $150 with the Windows software at least. And I know it's OEM, so I know it's different. But we'll get this thing set up. We'll see if I can rescue the MacBook from being a terminal server, and we'll have this thing be a terminal server. I think everything is there. I think the solid state drive it's got in it's probably big enough. I probably don't need an external drive, but or a 2.5-inch drive. I don't know. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of this thing? I mean, it looks pretty nice. I'll give you a report. I'll give you the report on how it's going, how it's working. I think it's got everything we need to make things happen. I'll get this up and running today. And I'll give you a report hopefully tomorrow or early next week. So that's where we're at. Gosh, I'm glad you guys are here this morning. Glad you guys stayed with me. Glad I got input from you. I think if you're on Twitch, if you're on Facebook, I think we're just going to have to kill the live stream to those. I think we're going to kill Restream, and we're just going to broadcast straight to YouTube. I can repost later to those platforms, but it's killing the chat. And I like to be able to throw the chat on the window so everybody can see it. That's just me. I'm funky crazy that way. Oh, we did get it. We did get a USB cable or an HDMI cable. It wasn't part of the power supply, so there is actually one HDMI cable in there too. So as always, if you can, I mean, watch out for yourself. Go out and get some exercise today if you can, because I know you're behind a desk, and like me, it's if you're not like Mike Bravo, you're already there. You don't have to worry about it. But if you're like me, you gotta get back on the horse. And I'll say again, subscribe if you can, hit the bell, share with your friends. Know next week we got changes to the platform coming up. Alex, I know we're way off our schedule, but we've got a process to fix that. We're going to relaunch another schedule. We're going to have more live shows. So what used to be canned shows are now going to be live. So get into it. It's going to be live with Mako and Emily. And the Cyber Insider is going to be live, where we talk about what videos we pushed out that week in Security Plus, Cloud Plus, ITF Plus, IT Fundamentals Plus. So hope to see you there. Hope you have a great day. And just be good out there. Be good out there. Be safe. As Mike is going to say, go get some. And I'm going to say, I got to move my camera, get it off the table. I'm going to say, just be safe out there. Be good to each other. Help each other out. And I will see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place.